I've been getting asked quite a lot lately about why I like it out here in the bush. There's not just one thing that I love about being out here in the outback. It's a pretty wild place, real wild country. It's so harsh, hot, the flies, but there's something really peaceful about it too. I'm just walking down the dry riverbed, just having a look around, seeing if I can spot any wildlife. Just sort of taking in the light on the ghost gums. It's a pretty amazing place. You kind of feel small when you're out here too. When this river floods, the enormous wall of water that comes down here, I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable. If you look, we've got 18 to 20 feet high water running through here. You don't want to be around here when that happens, that's for sure. So even though we have a dry riverbed here right now, the water's actually not as far as you think. It's pretty interesting early in the morning or late in the afternoon. See the kangaroos come down, you wonder what they're doing. You actually see them start to pour at the sand. Sometimes they'll go quite deep. All of a sudden the water starts to filter through the sand. It's a pretty amazing thing to see that there's actually still water, especially this time of year, just being held underneath the river. It's one of those things that kind of reminds you that even though we're in a really remote part of the outback, it's a really barren and harsh place, and it takes a lot of life that the land can actually still provide.
Even at its harshest, this barren outback allows life of all kinds to exist. With a little help from pastoral stations, these wells were designed to support grazing cattle. They actually end up becoming an amazing oasis amongst these desert landscapes and magnets to all kinds of wildlife. But there's always that reality that one mistake or one weakness can soon turn tragic, and many pay that ultimate price.
We all know when we head on the camping trip or we're going into the outback, we need to take enough water with us, but you can't really underestimate it out here, just how thirsty you can actually get. At the moment we're running mid-40s. I've been up to 58 degrees Celsius and working out in that extreme temperature, drinking up to 20 litres a day. It's just one of those things, you're constantly thirsty and you just have to force yourself to continually drink. Mick and I are actually drinking 40 litres of water a day just to stay alive. That's a huge amount over a week. But where it gets complicated is that buffer that we have to have. For those emergencies where we break down or get stuck somewhere, we always need an extra. So with the crew and I combined, just for this week out here on the Rose Quartz expedition, we carted 1,000 kilometres with us, 800 litres of water. And that's an enormous amount of extra logistics with our trucks. And it shows you just how precious water is out here and why it's the real gold in the outback.
So I've grown up in this landscape and I never take its brutal beauty for granted. For the crew who are new to this country, it's definitely unforgiving nature that can take a bit of adjusting to. For some, it's their first time seeing just how delicate this balance of life and death can be. This importance of water and life actually became a reality out here even on this trip. Starting off with so much water at the beginning of this expedition, the crew and I still had to alter our rations along the way to make sure we'd make it through this epic journey.
So I'm just taking a 5-minute break for the moment next to the machine, catching as much shade as I can get. We all know how important water is out here in the outback, but for me to function, I need to be able to eat. 44 degrees Celsius and you don't feel like eating. It's one of those things I do have to force myself to do. So I'll usually come in, try and choose something a little bit sweeter, make sure I can stay on top of my game, function and focus and get the work done.
Remembering to eat and drink enough to get the actual work done out here is definitely a job in itself. Mick and I will make sure we take regular breaks back at the trailer, even if it's for just 15 minutes. We can put the billy on, have a cup of tea and a slice of banana bread, and it really does help us from getting into trouble. Building these breaks into our routine means we can hop back on these machines refreshed and alert, which is really important when we're working around these complex pieces of equipment and hundreds of tons of rock, so we can get the job done safely. As the sun starts to settle across the outback, our minds shift to heading back to camp before dark. This is one of the best parts about working out here in this remote land. Getting back to sit around that open fire, relax with a drink, eventually kick our boots off, and maybe even we'll get to wash a little bit of that red dust off too.
So we live pretty rough here in the bush, but we do like some of the creature comforts, so having a wash is probably one of our priorities when we can. If we can spare the water, we will do. Just a little wash off. We've jerry-rigged a little water tank here, so we just basically have a barrel of water, and I've put a little air fitting in the top, so we just hooked it up to the compressor. We've got a few PSI just to pump the water out. Works pretty well, so we just hook a standard hose on there just with a shower head, and we can just sort of pull the trigger and just work ourselves under the water. So lather up, soap up, and then wash off, and we feel like new people after having a bit of a wash out here in the middle of the outback. So even though we had 40 degrees today and it's still quite warm, we come back to camp and we've actually got a fire cranked up, and there's a lot of warmth being put out, but there's something actually refreshing about it. It's just really nice to be able to sit next to it and just stare into the fire and just relax for the evening, and yeah, pretty awesome.
So as we finish off seconds of Mick's famous camp cooking and the campfire burns down, it's time to roll the old swag out for the night. Possibly the number one question we get asked about camping in the outback is where and how do you sleep out there? Everywhere Mick and I travel, we carry our swags. Basically, it's a mattress with a canvas covering. It's the most simple thing out, but it gives us the most amount of pleasure out there in the bush. Occasionally those creepy crawlies get a bit out of control though, so if we have the space, we'll throw the swag on the back of the truck or trailer. For me tonight, but I get a bit of extra luxury as my trusty old Mac's around, and in this country, she's a 5-star hotel. The Outback morning sun's our alarm clock out here on these expeditions, and you'd be surprised just how intense it builds as soon as it breaks the horizon. The sun is just so intense, and while Aussies have heard slip, slop, slap before, they're truly words to live by out here. For me, there's an added bonus to lathering up first thing before breakfast. I've learnt out here over the years, not only does sun cream keep you protected from the rays, but it actually keeps you cool, and that's a really big plus out here. Mixing that red dust and sun cream though, has its moments halfway through the day, and I'm still getting used to that texture.
So the old rose quartz can be pretty sharp, and we've got to be pretty careful, wear a lot of eye protection and gloves for sure. But it always seems to catch you whenever you don't expect it, and I had a few accidents today, just with some material just leaning against it the wrong way. I copped a couple little slithers off the wrist and on the arm. Just a rock just caught me as it was going into the bucket. But razor sharp, and it actually just slices, and even just when I was knocking something with a hammer, had the protection on luckily, but yeah, ended up getting a shard straight in the arm and opened up a bit of claret. But best thing to do is just hit it with a bit of antiseptic, and then drop a bit of sticky tape on top, and the old bush band-aid works pretty good.
There's no doubt I love this office of mine. As you can see from the glimpse into what our outback life is like, it's a place that constantly tests you. It's a beautiful, spectacular and rewarding place that I'll never get tired of, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But despite its breathtaking beauty, make no mistake, it's unforgiving. I grew up in it learning many secrets from my dad, uncles and prospectors and the traditional owners, and a lot from making mistakes and learning from them. Actually, there's been way too many of those. But after 40 years in this office of mine, there's still only one thing I don't have an answer for, and it's these bloody flies.
I'll tell you one of the things I really hate about this country right now. Relentless right now.